Favorite teachers in school, Mr. Jack Raby. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yes, sir. Tell me, we're going to talk a lot, but you have a lot of military in your background, including yourself. Let's start out talking about your Jack Raby Sr.
That's right. Yeah, this is my dad, Jack H. Raby Sr. He was in World War II. He was in the Army. He served in the China-Burma-India theater over in the Pacific, and he was with a group called Merrill's Marauders, which was a pretty tough outfit. And he was part of the inspiration that I had to go into Special Forces myself when I went into the military. But I was reminded every day of his service. He was shot right across the face by a Japanese sniper, and he had that scar there, and of course every time I'd start feeling rambunctious or something, I'd look at that and I'd say, well, hey, you know, I need to show a little bit more respect toward him, I think. And but he had a rough time over there, but he served like so many of these people. And then I had another uncle. I had an uncle here, Fred Raby. He was in the Normandy invasion. He was in World War II also, and he lost his leg, and he stepped on a mine, and then he had an artificial leg, and then, but the problem was with the other leg. That's the one that caused him so much trouble. But and so many of these people here, I grew up admiring these people. They were my heroes, if you will. I mean, they were the people I looked up to. I appreciated their service that they did to our country, and that's what instilled in me to feel like that I had to do something for our country, because they set the standard and the tone, and I felt like when it was my time, I needed to go into the military also.
Did you, when you were young, did you know that's what you was going to do? Pretty felt like that's what you was going to do?
Pretty much so. I thought from about 5 years old on that I wanted to be in the military. I felt like it was a debt that I needed to try to repay, which I knew I never could. But all of these people back, you know, all these veterans, they've done so much to get us to where we are today. And I don't feel like that I would ever felt comfortable going through life not doing at least a little part, a little share of what they had done. And
both your father and your uncle took some hard times.
Oh, definitely, and especially Uncle Fred. He had some a lot of health problems later on. Dad didn't have too many with his wound here, but he had a couple of malaria and jungle fever and some of those things, which caused him a little problem later on. And as a matter of fact, they said that he developed something called histoplasmosis.
Wow. A bird disease, right?
Yeah, and they thought that that probably had been picked up there in the China-Burma-India theater and was dormant, and then came back later on, and that's what actually, you know, caused him to pass away or whatever. So even, like you say, when you come home, sometimes the problems of war still, you know, are still with you, you know, and so.
Who are we going to look at next?
Well, I'd like to go to Korea, because Korea hadn't been mentioned yet.
All right, let's go down here.
Okay, we hadn't talked too much about the Korean era veterans, and of course, unfortunately, that's about the way it was in history. World War II, it ended, and then 2 or 3 years later, well, about 5 years later, so the Korea conflict comes on. But had two important people that went to church with, Ben Hugh Williams here, and he was in the Air Force, and Joe Ben's, everybody refers to him and knows him as Skin Gaddis. They were in the Korean era, and like I say, this was almost a forgotten era. You know, everybody.
What was this war about?
Well, it was when the Chinese came across, and the North Koreans and the South Koreans and they were going at it, had a sort of civil war, and then
Sort of like today, almost.
well, that's about true. And of course, we were going to help South Korea, and so they went to help the South Koreans fight the North Koreans, and then later on during the war, the Chinese came in, and which was really made it, pretty serious business, and they even talked about having to use nuclear weapons, and that's when Truman fired MacArthur and all this stuff, because MacArthur wanted to go into China and clean out the whole deal then. But it was an era that I don't think really ever got the recognition that they deserved, although any veteran will tell you they didn't go in for recognition.
Right.
They did it, as a service and as a duty they felt like they needed to do, and I think it's great that they're being recognized now. This is a wonderful project, and I know people have already said that several times, but if you've got a relative that was from Lincoln County, Fayetteville, Lincoln County, and it's not up here, please do so, because they deserve the honor. And it's good because I see people up here that I didn't realize that they had served. Sure. And so it puts them in an entirely different light in my mind also.
Absolutely. Well, where are we going to go next?
Well, let's go to my era. Let's go to Vietnam.
All right. We're honored to have Jack Raby Jr. here. And Jack, tell us about your experiences in the Army as captain.
Well, yeah, that's, I guess, in my younger days, and I wish I was still that size now. But I enlisted into the Army, and I went through a lot of schools. I was lucky, I was well trained. I went through officers candidate school, got my commission, then jump school and ranger school and special forces, and then later on I went to flight school, and then of course I went to Vietnam, and I served in Vietnam for a couple of tours, and served with a lot of great people, a lot of good people, and it was an honor to me to have been a part of such great groups of people. Aviation groups were wonderful. The Special Forces people were fantastic, and I was just privileged to have known those people, and I'm glad I survived and made it back home, but I still...
You flew a helicopter. Tell us about some of those experiences. I think one you were shot at a few times.
Yeah, well, more than shot at.
You were shot in the hand, correct?
Yeah, well, we were flying in places and on the ground in places at the time we weren't supposed to be there. I guess I can say this on TV. And I mean, now it's we were in Cambodia and Laos. That was our area of operation, and because of those areas, the combat was pretty tough, and we would be extracting teams on ropes, and of course, when you're up there at a high hover, they're down there, you're sitting ducks, and of course we lost a lot of aircraft, and a lot of people got wounded, and but that was the job, that was the mission, and no one ever shied away from it. And were you nervous going into that? I mean, or were you just trying to do the job? Well, we were trying to do the job. My biggest fear was the fact is that I would make a mistake that would get someone else killed or whatever. Sure. I mean, the physical danger for yourself usually is secondary. Wow. I mean, it's not saying that you're brave or anything. It's just you're trying to do your job. And after everything was over, and after you realize how close you came to getting killed, then you would get a little shaky maybe. But you fed off of each other. I mean, so many brave people there, and so you didn't want to not hold up your end, and so. So when you say you did 2 tours, what does that exactly mean of Vietnam? Well, what happened is that every time I would get wounded, I would go to the hospital in Japan, and I would recuperate there. And instead of coming back to the States for an assignment, I would go back and then when I'd get wounded again, I'd go back to Japan, and then I kept doing this. So I got, credit for a total of 2 tours, although I didn't spend 2 years in Vietnam. It was had some hospital time worked in there.
What was some of your injuries?
Well, I got shot in the arm and across the face, and shrapnel here, and shrapnel in the foot, and plexiglass, and shrapnel in the face, and where we're in a lot of action, you see, you get hit a lot. But lucky, a lot of them were very minor. I guess the worst was in my arm, but I was fortunate. We had a lot of people that didn't make it back, and that's it makes my injuries very, very minor compared to what they had to endure. So.
How were you communicating with your folks back here in Lincoln County when you were hurt and things like that?
Back then, we didn't have the communications like we did now, and matter of fact is that a lot of what we were doing obviously was classified. So even our letters that we would write back and forth, they would usually hold them a month or so before they would send them home. And then when I would go to the hospital in Japan, I could call home. But back then it was like $50 for the first 3 minutes or so like that. And then of course, every time my dad would answer the telephone, he says, "Uh-oh, you're in the hospital, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And so we communicated that way, and I told him, I said, "Well, I'm sorry about the expense." He said, "Well, don't worry about that." He was just upset that he knew that I'd been wounded.
Absolutely.
But I said, as long as I'm calling and talking,
that means you're good.
You know that I'm good. So
tell everybody at home what the Vietnam War was about.
Well, to a lot of people it means different things. Some people say it was useless. Some historians do, some don't. The people that are there, they have different stories. It was over a long period of time. Some hated it there. Some would go and extend and go back again. But basically, we were there to help one of our allies. South Vietnam had been invaded by the North Vietnamese. We were being supported by the Chinese and the Soviet Union, and we were there basically to honor our commitment, our treaty commitments, and that's why I went originally. But then when I was there, I got to know, especially the Mountaineer tribesmen. They were an Aborigines type people there in Vietnam, and I saw how they were being treated, and then I said, that's why I need to go back again to help these people, because I sort of looked toward it like the people were treated in World War II by the Nazis, and that needed to be stopped, and I felt like this needed to be stopped. And so I would have do it again. I would go back again, and
is it true how you were treated when you come home? Or tell people how you're treated when you come home. We've heard stories.
Well, I could write a book on this almost. I landed out in Washington, then went to California, and we got off the plane, had bags of urine thrown at me, called a baby killer, a warmonger.
Why was this? Why was America turning against our own people?
Well, they just didn't support the war, a lot of them. A lot of people were protesting because they didn't want to go themselves. and so I guess there were a lot of different reasons, but I never could figure out why they would take it out on the soldiers. But then on the other hand, there were some people that would come and they would, congratulate you being home and welcome you home and buy you a dinner or something. And one person here in town even sent some flowers to our house, and to this day I think that's the first time I've been ever sent flowers or whatever. But people were just they were divided, and that was to me the real tragic part of the war, other than the ones that lost their lives, which was the most tragic.
Sure.
But
Absolutely.
the fact that it was dividing our country so much, that was really something that we're still recovering from now.
Absolutely.
You know, and thank goodness we're not making the same mistake today. And I wear usually a hat, an aviation hat or a special forces hat, and people come up to me now and you know, thank you for your service, and I more or less wear it not for that, and I appreciate them saying that, but I do it to the other veterans that we can get together and we can swap war lies and you know, things of that nature.
Did you fly much when you come back?
No, I flew some, but once I got out of the military, you know, I didn't fly anymore. It was too expensive. And,
that's true.
And of course, I plan on staying in, but I met my wife there at Fort Bragg, and my future wife, we got married, and she wanted me out of the military yesterday because she'd grown up around a military town. So I got out and then came back, and I was fortunate to be able to teach here in Lincoln County, and she taught here in the city, and we met so many good people and students, and like you say, is that that's one of the great things about living here in hometown. And so if I mess up, you can correct this and give me some extra points like I probably gave you.
I needed them. I guarantee you. Well, I appreciate your service and your family service with your father and your uncle and all you've done. And, you know, all the years I've heard about you getting shot and the things we've really never had a chance to talk about it. Never would have thought today would be the day, but I'm proud we had the opportunity to at least discuss it and because it's really neat to hear you talk about how you feel about those that didn't make it. You know,
that's true, and I don't want this to be made about me. This is about all these veterans here, and again, thanks to Linda and some of the people that has helped her to make this, you know, to come into being and come about, because these things just don't happen. And again, I'd like to stress to everyone, please get the pictures of your relatives that have served, and so they can be honored. And every time I come through here and look, I see someone else. I said, I didn't realize that they had served. And then, of course, unfortunately, we're still going to have a lot more to come up there and wars to come. And but that's a sign of the times. And
that's right. Go ahead. We can talk about him.
Stanley Sullivan, and we've already talked about Bobby, and there's some others that I didn't know as well that we've the Moorhead and the Armstrong, and the Davis that died in Vietnam. Stanley was my next door, my back door neighbor or whatever, and I grew up with Stanley and Dexter Sullivan. And Dexter's up here too, and he got killed on the 4th of July. And I happened to be fortunate enough to come home on leave to be at his funeral, and it sort of, you know, set the tone and my attitude heading toward Vietnam. I said, well, you know, this is going to be for real. This is not like you see in the movies or whatever. I mean, you know, people they bleed and they die, but anyway, you know, I think about Stanley a lot, and Dexter and his mother, and all the parents of all the ones that have died, and we have a lot of ones that were killed in action. But and you know, talking about all this combat, everybody here didn't serve in combat, but everybody here was important. I mean, whatever they did, they may be in an air-conditioned office, typing, still important, and a lot of times people felt like that they didn't do their fair share. If they served, they did their fair share, and some people just are called upon to do others. The quarterback gets all the praise, and the poor linemen, they just
that's right.
But yet without them you can't have a team, and this is one of the best teams in the world, and I hope that we still have enough young people coming up that will want to be in part of this team.
Absolutely. Lincoln County strong at the prime.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
service.
Appreciate-
It's Jack Raby Jr. right here. Thank you very much for not only being a great school teacher throughout the years, but also for your service.
Well, appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank y'all for what y'all do.
Thank you.
Thank you.